This is my very own personal experience with sleep paralysis and astral projection. As a teenager, I experienced sleep paralysis often, and to say none the least, it would always freak me out. Many of you probably have experienced sleep paralysis as well, and I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. There was this one experience I had with sleep paralysis that still haunts me to this day when I think about it. This happened around 6 years ago, when I was 16. I will give some backstory. This was during a time I was suffering with really bad depression and anxiety. I was drawn to meditation to help relieve me with some of my problems. I'd listen to meditation tracks on YouTube to help me relax and forget about the world. Eventually, I stumbled across some astral projection videos. I didn't believe that astral projection was a real thing. I just thought it was worth a shot, and it sounded like if it was real, it would be a really cool experience. For the next few months, each time I went to sleep, I'd play these astral projection videos. These videos made my sleep paralysis worse, eventually to the point where I would have it every time I woke up, or just drifted off to sleep. A part of me thought that maybe this was the first step to astral projection. This experience I had soon after all this creeps me out and gives me chills whenever I think about it. One morning, I was sleeping all alone in the house, with nobody but my dog beside me. I woke up a couple of times before the experience, and every time I did, I had sleep paralysis. Some of these episodes lasted on upwards of a couple minutes. It was pretty bad. During one of these episodes, I fell back asleep and, to what I assume, woke up around 20 minutes later. Just after I got up, I felt a little bit floaty, but I was starting my usual morning routine. Then after I walked across my room, I started to hear voices and nothing seemed to be right. These voices I heard did not induce fear in me, but sounded friendly. They were warning me of something and telling me to be careful. I can faintly even remember one of them telling me to stay away from something. I was completely shocked that all of this was happening and froze up for a while, as anyone would do. At some point, I turned around to look back at my bed, and to my astonishment, there I was, sleeping in my usual spot. This confused the hell out of me, as I felt like I was awake. Now this is the part that just creeps me the hell out. While looking at myself briefly, I shifted my eyes to the right side of my bed, and what I saw is absolutely terrifying. Right beside where I was sleeping was this thing on the floor against the wall, sitting in a fetal position. It did not look friendly whatsoever and appeared to be very haggard and looked filthy. It looked like it was feminine, and the entire time I stared at it, it kept its or her head tucked in her knees, so I never saw her face. Its skin appeared to be very mossy green, and from what I can remember, it looked as if it was scaly in some parts. The hair is what I remember the most. It was fairly long and was extremely dirty. It was brown, but also with a tint of green from all the filth. Half of its hair was in the form of dreadlocks. Although I could tell this thing was a woman, a part of me could tell it wasn't human. The entire time I gazed upon it, it stayed in the fetal position and didn't move an inch. It looked as though it was waiting for me to wake up. My heart raced as I could not explain what was going on. I was awake, but there I was in bed still sleeping, and with this horrifying creature right beside me on the floor. Shortly after, I woke up, but this time for real. I just kinda sat in bed for a while, shocked by what just happened, as I'm sure many of you would do too. When I got the courage, I peeked off the side of the bed and there was nothing, or at least appeared that way. I went about my day normally. I just didn't want to be in my house alone. This experience just kept replaying in my mind. I can't decide whether it was an out-of-body experience or just some sort of weird dream. Even if it was a dream, it was very lucid and terrifying nonetheless. I had another experience shortly after, maybe a few weeks. Time becomes scattered after it's been a while. This was the last real paranormal experience I had, and a part of me feels like it was related to what happened, so I think I will mention it. I was staying over at my dad's friend's house and had a room to myself. Before bed, I was playing guitar and listening to music. I was not even thinking about anything paranormal. About a minute after I turned off the lights and laid my head down, I heard something that absolutely terrified me. Right beside my ear, I heard this raspy female voice whisper my name. It was a whisper, but it sounded as if she was trying to yell. I kind of froze for a second and got this extremely uneasy feeling, like I knew I wasn't alone. I immediately shot up from my bed and searched for the door to leave the room. The only problem was that it was pitch black and I couldn't see what I was doing. It took me at least 5 minutes to find it, as I was so disoriented. I was searching for the door on the wrong side of the room. I have never become so panicked in my entire life. With all my other experiences, I have remained calm, but something in me compelled me to get the hell out of there. Once I was out of the room, I even had a panic attack. After that, I couldn't sleep alone in that house ever again. Since these events, I haven't experienced anything else like it, and it all just kinda stopped. Anyways, guys, what do you think about my experience? Leave any comments if you feel like it. The next story is from Reddit. My life is in a complete state of utter disarray. I fear that I have made an irreversible mistake, with consequences that I cannot even begin to imagine. I constantly question my judgment and what possessed me to do what I have done. This is how it all began. Like many of you in our nosleep, I am not only a frequent lurker on this sub, but on many other forums and websites dealing with the supernatural and or paranormal, especially late at night, because for some reason it gives me a thrill. Now, despite this being a passing interest, I have always remained somewhat skeptical and viewed these mediums as more as a form of entertainment as opposed to an actual belief. My most recent fascination was with astral projection, an out-of-body experience that I am sure many of you are familiar with. In short, it is essentially an exercise where one is able to separate their soul from their physical body and explore the spiritual or astral plane. According to many sites and forums that I frequented, this appeared to be a rewarding and even pleasant spiritual experience. As I read more on the subject, I became more and more interested, brushing off the occasional warnings along the lines of, "But be careful, because for all the good spirits out there are still bad ones lurking in the astral plane." Late Tuesday on a not-so-special night, I got a wild hair. I had found a fairly detailed step-by-step guide on a forum explaining how to astral project, and I, being the skeptic that I was, decided to give it a try. The steps were quite simple. Step 1. I was getting ready for bed, fairly tired, and lied down on my bed in the pitch darkness. My roommate had gone to bed down the hallway hours ago, so the apartment was silent. Lying horizontally, I had to keep my right arm at a perpendicular angle, where my fist was facing upwards towards the ceiling, and then attempt to go to sleep. The reason behind the arm placement was that as I began to drift off to sleep, my arm would begin to fall and I would consciously realize this, bringing my fist back to its original position. Step 2. Now, while doing this for some time, the next step was to imagine, in my mind's eye, some sort of object. In my case, I used a backpack, being right in front of my face, and then slowly imagining it growing further and further away until it was impossible to see, and then starting over again. Step 3. Next, while maintaining these 2 steps, I was supposed to start seeing multicolor lights and feel some sort of vibrations. This is where I thought my experience would end. However, as I dryly imagined that little backpack disappearing and reappearing from my view, I was surprised to see that, from the corner of my eyes, light began to dance into my black plane of view. They appeared like neon streamers, pink, blue, violet, and yellow, creeping into my mind's eye, leaving behind their respective streaks of color. Simultaneously, I began to feel the faintest sensation of vibrations in my fingertips and toes. It felt like whenever your hand or foot falls asleep, like tiny needle pricks. Now at this point, I was a mixture of fear, excitement, and wonder, and lost in the image of the backpack flying in and out of view. This was intertwined with splashes of neon color. The vibration began to seize the entirety of my body. The feeling was almost euphoric, growing ever so rapidly, my body seemingly shaking uncontrollably. Step 4. This was to be the final step. After achieving the lights and vibrations all over my body, I was to will myself out of my body. This meant trying to imagine myself floating towards the ceiling, to complete the separation of my soul. As I excitedly imagined as such, being overflown with waves of euphoria, I began to literally feel the terror. My soul was being lifted, and the separation was underway. This is when things went wrong, and fast. The feelings of euphoria were drowned out instantly by feelings of unbelievable fear and dread. I quickly tried to wake myself up, and could not, and inside my mind's eye, I was greeted by what I can only describe as a floating head. The image was, to say the least, grotesque. If this head had a gender, I would say it was male. Its skin was a gross yellow color, covered in wrinkles like that on overstretched leather. Its eyes were small and barely distinguishable, glowing scarlet. Its nose was 2 small slits, and its mouth was first closed, also a slit. Then it widened, exposing 2 rows of disfigured teeth. "Wake up, it's not real," I told myself through the pangs of terror emanating throughout my body. But the feeling of being torn through my body did not subside, for it seemed like the longest 30 seconds of my life, an eternity, until I finally snapped out of it. I was staring back at the black ceiling, seeing the outlines of my ceiling fan whizzing around. Now obviously, I was afraid, terribly, but thought nothing of the incident and attempted to just move on. But then the next night came. As I fell asleep, I had a dream. In this dream, I am standing on the platform of a ruined train station, made of bricks and cobblestones. There are no walls, nor ceilings, just the rundown platform, giving way to my outdoor surroundings. It is nighttime, but the moon is shining a white glow on the scene, revealing a forest stretching as far as the eye can see, of dead ghostly white scraggly trees, branches convoluted in every type of direction. I'm standing on the edge of this ruined platform, and a railroad track runs in both directions, going to the left and going to the right of my vantage point, creating a neat cut through the forest of dead trees. As I look to my left, about 50 yards down the tracks, is a figure. It's shaped like a man, but it's so dark I cannot make out any distinguishable features. It, in lack of a better term, just stands there, staring at me. It doesn't move, it doesn't shift, it doesn't holler or speak. It just stands there, staring at me in the ominous silence of my dream. I have been having this dream every night now for a week, and while at first it was just simply unnerving, on Saturday, the dream took a whole new meaning. I began to see the black figure in real life. I woke up Saturday morning and got my things ready to go to the gym, and when I got in my car and drove around my apartment building to where my view was unobstructed for a good way, there it was, the black figure. Just as indistinguishable as before, and the approximate same distance it keeps in my dream, around 50 yards. I was so taken back that I slammed on my brakes, rubbed my eyes, and glanced up again. It was still there, it hadn't moved. I inched my car forward a few feet, and the figure began to move with the scenery. It was keeping the same distance, no matter where I moved. I drove down a long stretch of service road to my gym, and there it just stood, gliding down the street in front of me and passing through other vehicles and obstructions. I parked my car at the gym, and it walked with me, keeping the distance of 50 yards, eventually passing through the exterior walls of the gym and out of my sight. It wouldn't leave me alone. I would see it standing on the other side of the gym, directly next to another patron who had no reaction whatsoever, watching me, always watching me. It's been this way ever since. If I am confined to a small room, such as my living room, where I happen to be right now, and my field of vision is less than 50 yards, I cannot see it. But if I were to step out into my patio now and glance across my complex's parking lot, there it would stand, motionless. And every night the dream still comes to me, always unchanging. And then last night, my roommate and I were in the living room when he stepped outside to have a cigarette. I glanced up as he opened the patio door, and I caught the slightest glimpse of the black figure standing in the parking lot. My roommate came back in. I again caught a passing glance, I closed my eyes in unnerved fear. I opened them to the shock of seeing the black figure standing in my doorway. It was less than 12 feet away, and where its head should be was the grotesque face I saw at the end of my unfortunate astral projection experience. It stared at me for a few seconds, its mouth twisting in a nauseating smile, and then it zipped backwards, back to its 50-yard distance. I can't live a normal life anymore. This thing, no matter where I go or what time of day, it is constantly following me. It's beginning to strain my relationships with friends and family, as they wonder why I stare over their shoulder wide-eyed. I came to this sub to seek advice from other Redditors who have experienced or may have some sort of knowledge on astral projection. What do I do? What can I do? I can't live the rest of my life in an unnerved state of fear, being stared down by this, whatever you call it. What sort of malice have I opened myself up to? I honestly don't know what else to do, because I figure if I tell anyone in my life about this, they'll just think I'm crazy or trying to be funny. Please, anybody, help me. If you check the link in the description, you will find more to this story. Alright guys, thanks for watching.